Welcome, it's 5 o'clock. I'd like to introduce you to rise and continue the allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, God, indivisible, and liberty and justice. The public hearing before the Echo Planning Commission regarding the comprehensive plan update. At this time, I'd like to open the hearing for file number 01-2025 Comp Plan Municipal Code and Zoning Updates. Okay, so I do want to remind everybody that as things move along, they could get heated. And that's good. That means we're passionate about what we believe in. But I do ask that we keep it respectful and that we keep the comments productive and positive as we can. And realize that the council members who also act as the planning commission, we wear multiple hats up here. We're all volunteers and we're trying to do the best we can. with the information that we have to try and represent the community and what the community wants and needs. And so, and we don't get a dime for this. This is all volunteer time. So please keep that in mind when you're addressing the council. These guys and gals work really hard for you and really try to get it right. And sometimes we don't get it right, but we certainly try to get it right when we get it wrong. So it is nice to see everybody. I do mean that from the bottom of my heart. I love to see the community involvement. And so at this time, I will review the process for the hearing. So now is the time specified for the Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the following matter. Consideration of file 01-2025, adopt an updated comprehensive plan, replacement development code, and zoning map in accordance with the technical assistance grant received from LCDC. The substantive criteria upon which the Planning Commission will base its decision in this matter are contained in 7-1-6 Plan and Implementation Measure Review and 7-1-7 Plan Amendment Applications and 7-1-8 Plan Amendment, 9-1-6 Zoning and Development Code Administration Amendments, 9-1-7 Condition for Granting Amendments, 8-1-2 Subdivision Administration Amendments. A public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and mailing address for the record. The hearing is required by law to be recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the commission members and allow for challenges from the audience. I will open the public hearing with a staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about the case. Next, there will be testimony from proponents, those persons in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor of the application. And next, there will be testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer testimony or ask questions. And if you do want to speak tonight, you must sign in on the sheet up here. If your name's not on the sheet, you will not be allowed to speak tonight. So just keep that in mind. Then to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from those in favor of the application. To expedite the hearing, the commission members may ask questions of persons as they testify. And those questions would be clarifying questions, not discussion type items. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are a complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission members and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with details specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in the circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. These are the rules. Any questions? Okay. so now I can move on with that. We're gonna ask about the, biases and ex parte patients, correct? That's what we do at this time, correct, Dave?
I think you go on to either staff report.
No, we need to do the questions addressed to the planning commission, that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's the next thing on my list. I just wanted to be sure. I wasn't skipping anything. Okay. So have any members of the commission had any ex parte contacts? So that's you guys here. Have you talked to anybody outside of the council or the committee? You can't hear me?
You're bad, you increased the volume.
Oh, sorry. Usually he's got me turned way up. Thank you, guys.
I had people in the community come up to me and ask what's going on, or when's the meeting, and what time is it, and things like that. They're saying that's a conversation.
I would,
My neighbors come up and ask me.
You can't hear her.
We've had people in the community come up and ask me the time of when a hearing is, and what is this, and I say it's a comprehensive plan, zoning plan, but those are the kind of conversations that my neighbors have asked me, and people in the community, when I go to the post office, ask me those questions that I don't even know. So that, yeah, I don't know if you consider that a conversation, but I have been asked questions.
no, I think that's valid. I've had the same thing. I've had a few people ask me the same types of questions. Most of my conversations have been with the committee that was formed. But otherwise, I've had a couple of folks that have approached me in the public.
Yeah, I've had the time and date and all that asked me about this hearing specifically, so yes. Yeah, same with the asking time and date. I've had people ask me what the time and date of the meeting.
Am I better now, guys?
When you talk into the microphone, yes.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
okay. Well, I like to look around and I'm over here. Sorry. Need one that's attached to my ear or something, I guess, so. I'm usually loud enough, but, I will do my best, and if I get way late, just point to the mic, somebody, so. Okay, Marie?
I haven't really talked to that many people this week. As we got closer to this meeting. But in the past, people have asked me about what's going on and
Okay,
stuff like that.
very well. Richard?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Okay, have any commission members have conflicts of interest or bias which could prevent you from rendering an impartial decision on this matter? So I guess it's a two-part question in a way. Do you have any conflicts of interest or bias? And second of all, would that make you impartial to making a decision? Marie?
Maria.
Is it Maria?
Yeah,
It's always Maria in
I'm sorry, Maria. I apologize.
Not that I can think of.
Okay. So I guess I'll start. I feel that I have some sort of a conflict of interest because I am a property owner in Echo. And since the comp plan potentially can affect everything in town, for that matter, I do have an interest in what's going on here. So as far as that's concerned, that would be my conflict of interest. Would it bar me from making a impartial decision? No, it doesn't have any effect on my decision.
Well, the only, I'm an owner, I own my home, that's the only problem that I have right now.
Okay.
So, that's it.
No, I'm
Justin?
a homeowner. Well,
Jane?
homeowner.
Tammy?
I'm a homeowner and have properties, but none of them have been changed for financial increase in zoning or a request to have them changed. So I'm not sure why you would think you had a conflict of interest unless you hadn't had a zoning change and you had a financial gain in that zone change. That would be ethics in conflict of interest if you have a financial gain. So I have properties, they have been not rezoned, and I have no financial gain because they haven't been rezoned.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Okay, so as far as I know, there was a lot of conflict when it came to rezoning properties between the two ditches currently zoned as public open space. It sounds like the committee was able to rezone the other properties within the city limits without conflict, but for some reason, this portion of the rezoning was an issue. Out of the 6 private property owners in the zone of public open space, my dad is one of them. When I found out that the rezoning of the property my dad owns was an issue within the comprehensive committee, I asked the city administrator if I would be able to vote on rezoning or if I could vote on the comprehensive plan. He said he would investigate. My understanding from talking to the city administrator and the city's lawyers, every person on council has a conflict of interest because we all live in Echo, own houses, some own businesses, some even own multiple properties within the city. And if anything, the property my dad owns would only be a potential conflict of interest. I would also like to point out that we are here to vote on the comp plan. We are here to get the comp plan into compliance. We are here to look at the comp plan without bias. We are not here to vote based on the experience some committee members have while working to bring us this product.
Thank you, Verlinda.
Here's my comp.
Richard?
My wife and I own property in town. I find this a little silly because, in order to be on the council, you have to live in Echo. So how could anybody not be in this position?
Very well, thank you, Richard. Hey, does any? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
This is from the commission, Josh Sullivan, in a letter, and it clearly states that if this situation, if the city councils take any actions or make any decisions or recommendations to create an opportunity for their own financial benefit, they may be in violation of ORS 244-0401 if the financial gain would not otherwise be available. So I'm not sure why we would think because we're just city councilors in a small city that we are not responsible to this law. If you have any chance of a financial gain, you need to be excluded. And that is in the committee too. It should have been excluded. That was not brought to the committee members too, because it is a financial gain of a property in a zoning change.
Property I do not own, and nothing has changed yet or will happen. It is potential. If you want to read further down, it is a potential conflict of interest after making the public announcement the official may participate in the matter, including making a decision or voting.
I would agree as the attorney for the city that it is at best a potential conflict of interest. And therefore, Councilwoman Anderson has declared a potential conflict and may proceed and vote.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is, does anyone from the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of any members of the commission? Okay, seeing as there's none. Let's then the public hearing and have a report from staff. So the public hearing is now open. May we have the staff report? So Carla, please give us the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor, members of the council, or commission tonight, excuse me. I've debated long about just where to start, where to end, with the staff report. The last time we were all together, it was a long night, and I don't know that I necessarily want to go that long again. So I'm gonna try my best to abbreviate my presentation tonight, to allow more opportunity for public comment. I think there are a couple of things that it's important. I don't know, is the mic picking me up okay? Okay, I usually project pretty good, so, okay. I think there's a couple of topics I want to hit on, based on feedback I've gotten, things I've heard, you know, I don't live here, but boy, the grapevine's long. So I want to share some things, and then I do want to just touch base on the specific staff reports, because that is where your substantive criteria that you're making your decision is held. We talked a little bit about the documents that stand behind those at the joint work session. We didn't really talk about the staff reports. So that's where I'm going to focus my time tonight, and then we can get into whatever follows after that. So a couple of topics that I want to touch on. There's been a lot of talk about citizen involvement. And I think it's important to understand that the citizens were represented through the Public Advisory Committee process. The appointment was of 6 individuals. 2 of those individuals were counselors, 4 of them were members of the public. And the specific purpose of that was to make sure that there was representation from the community of Echo into this process. So the council, there was a short kickoff at the council meeting. I don't recall the date. I want to say it was a March meeting. I will share it happened at the same time that my dad passed. So there's a period of time in there that it just is kind of a blur. But it happened in that time frame. It was last spring. I know I came to council, I presented, and shortly thereafter, they had a list of 6 members, 2 councilors, 4 members of the public, and we initiated and kicked off what then took place over the next 12 months, or not quite. There's been an assertion that the meetings were close to the public, and I'm going to have to say, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that. Now, could there have been more communication about when the meetings were, or you know, were people invited to attend? Maybe, but I think everybody has a responsibility in that role. Were the meetings closed to the public? No. Could the public have attended? Absolutely. My experience with Public Advisory Committee meetings is that they're long, they're arduous, they're very topic specific. And generally, the folks you get around the table are those who have an interest, who truly have an interest. And so I think there was an opportunity to express that, and folks stepped forward. There were, at the last several meetings, some folks who attended. I believe Maria attended 2 or 3 of those meetings. There's also a gentleman who attended one. I'm sorry, I don't know who it was. And then there was a meeting that a woman attended. So again, I don't know who those folks were, but they were in the room, they were there, they did hear what was happening. I think that the objective of this process is to update your comprehensive plan. What I would say are currently your zoning and subdivision regulations, and then to actually adopt the zoning map. What Echo currently has is a comprehensive plan. It's not a bad comprehensive plan, but it's not quite robust enough. It needs some more meat on the bones. Both your subdivision and your zoning ordinance are very much out of date, and in many instances inconsistent with current Oregon revised statute or Oregon administrative rules. And needed significant amendment to become compliant with that. In addition, most communities following what today would be called general planning practices actually have a combined development code. They take those 2 documents that you have and they combine it. I will say, in talking with Jacob Fouts, who I knew through other avenues, but was the planner at the city of Umatilla, who supported a number of actions in front of this body. he and I did talk about the Echo, subdivision and zoning ordinance, and he expressed a lot of concerns. Again, both documents not being compliant with current statute or rule, being significantly outdated. And I think even more troubling for him is that they conflicted with each other. You would find a process in one that was then something different in the other, and it became unclear what should be followed. And I think that also became evident as you went through the Northgate process, that there was a lot of concern about how it didn't work, for lack of a better word. And I think the zoning map is also an interesting piece. I kept asking your city administrator, where's your zoning map? You gotta have a zoning map, and he kept referring to the 1978 comprehensive plan map. And he's like, no, that's not a zoning map. But that is what has been relied on. And so it was very unclear. We were able to find an old 2013 map that the county had created for the city of Echo, but it was just a lot. It wasn't accurate either. It didn't reflect what they knew to be current zoning. And so the process was designed to help you get to at least a current zoning map and then adopt an updated map with the changes. That actually in the end didn't end up being very significant changes to your zoning map. I think one of the things we probably didn't spend enough time on in the past is actually talking about the problems with the current regulation. Because what I continue to hear feedback on is that we're creating something out of whole cloth, that this is just, we're just creating new regulation. And in the end, we're really not. The proposal is really about a refined development code, updates to your comprehensive plan, a refined development code that would replace your subdivision ordinance and your zoning ordinance, and then a current zoning map, a proposed zoning map to replace the current. There were a couple of other components of your development code that are also out of date. And so in the strikeout versions that I provided, I've literally taken Title 6, Title 8, and Title 9. Title 6 is building regulations. It's not even consistent with current building official requirements or building code requirements. I'm recommending that you delete that title in its entirety. And then we need to work towards getting a clear agreement with state building code so that you have a clear connection to the state and the building program. And then eliminating Title 8, and I won't remember which one is which. I think Title 8 is the zoning ordinance and Title 9 is the subdivision ordinance. I might have that backwards. I have it backwards. Okay. Sometimes I get things confused. So anyway, both of those are proposed to be struck and replaced with a new development code. The proposed regulatory framework, I think this should be identified as a plus, because at this point in time, you are at your first hearing and you do not have a letter from the Department of Land Conservation and Development outlining all the problems with your proposal. Not a letter, not a comment, not a phone call. That's highly unusual. And I think that's because for two reasons. One, Dawn Hurt, the Department of Land Conservation and Development regional representative, participated in many of the public advisory committee meetings. She was there, she provided feedback, she knew where we were going. I also think that we have not heard from them because it's a solid development code. It's a solid comprehensive plan and it's a solid zoning map. My experience is that you get to this point and you always get a letter from DLCD and they usually outline at least 3 things and sometimes as many as 10 things that you don't have right. And I think that the PAC should take a lot of, I don't know what the right word would be. I think they should be proud of the work they did. Because at the end, I think what they have recommended to the planning commission to eventually get to the city council is a very solid recommendation, a comprehensive plan that has additional findings in it. It has some solid narrative. It's describing the various different goals, the resources, the public services. There's more description in there than you had previously. It has a very solid finding statement, and it has some updated and additional policy statements. Things that the council can look at and go, these are the things we want to work on over the next 20 years. The combined development code is consistent. It's consistent with a number of things. It's consistent with current ORS, particularly chapter 92 for the subdividing of property. It is consistent with the requirements for public notice. It is consistent with the requirements for parking standards. It's consistent with your current TSP and the transportation planning rule. Now, I'm going to caveat that statement right there. If you are successful in obtaining a TGM grant and updating your TSP, you will have a product at the end of that that's going to come back and suggest changes appropriately to both your comprehensive plan and to your development code. And you should do those. Because it's, again, we are current and consistent with your current TSP and as much as possible with the transportation planning rule. But an updated TSP will provide a better framework to further refine those parts and pieces. I think the important thing, what we also did in the proposed development code is incorporate much of the decision that you made around Northgate. So the approved uses that the council worked diligently on for Northgate are included in the chapter 2, post chapter 2 of the development code, and clearly delineate the uses, both allowed uses, conditional uses, uses that require certain standards. They're included in there. The changes to those were only to make the process fit with the amended process that the balance of the development code brings together. So again, the intent has been retained and we refined parts and pieces of that. I think it's important to note that part of your Northgate decision included kind of this this objective that you wanted to do, kind of preserve the, I'm trying to remember the word, timeless Western, I think is the word that you incorporated in that decision. And in the world of planning, we like things to be very clear and very objective. You will hear we often talk about clear and objective standards. And I talked to Dave and was like, what do you mean? What does this mean? And I got to the path and we talked about it. What's the objective of this timeless Western? And so we added language to the comprehensive plan to support that in a broad statement. And then in the development code provisions, we try to narrow that down and say, how do they achieve that? Because you can't just tell them to do timeless Western and not tell them how they can achieve it. So we made, I think, some really good suggestions to the path that got incorporated into the proposed development code that's in front of you that would achieve your timeless Western desires in the Northgate area, in those particular zones. I'm not going to be checking out the map anymore. Comprehensive plan improvement, I touched on those. I was also asked to touch briefly on the appeals process. So this is a legislative decision. You will be replacing current titles with new development code. You're going to be replacing the current comprehensive plan with a new comprehensive plan. You're going to be adopting a zoning map. And that zoning map will have a floodplain layer on it. To be clear, that floodplain layer has already been adopted. We're just depicting it on the map. So it's not a change to your floodplain layer. This hearing tonight, eventually the planning commission, whether tonight or some future public hearing, will come to a conclusion of sorts and make a recommendation to the city council. The city council will then hold a hearing and they will also eventually come to a decision and adopt some final product. That final product then is appealable should somebody have a concern with it to the Land Use Board of Appeals. So it is not a local appeal, it is appeal to LUBA. Now, because this is a grant process, and I don't know if Dawn, is Dawn on the call? Or you're there. Oh, she is here. So she'll be able to clarify this for me. This is not a periodic review task, but it is a task under a grant. And there may be a commission process as well. So eventually we'll give Dawn a couple minutes, and let her add anything she might have. But, there may be a commission process, should an appeal happen, and I will let her clarify that. I know it would go to the commission if it's a periodic review task, but because this is a grant task, I'm not sure. So I'm gonna say, I believe this is an appeal to LUBA. I'm gonna let Dawn modify my answer if I might be wrong. So that's kind of the high level stuff that I wanted to touch on. Now I want to touch briefly on each of the staff reports that you have. I'm gonna go in this order. I'm gonna start with a comprehensive plan. I'm gonna go to the zoning map, and then I'm gonna go to the development code. So in the staff report, for the comprehensive plan, staff reports generally do a couple of things. They kind of tell you what you're doing, they kind of summarize it, they provide you with the, information on what the, standards are. And then they, also will evaluate, the goals. So, for the comprehensive plan staff report, I provide a little bit of background, I provide a summary of the changes. The text was reorganized, although not significantly. We placed the goals in the same order as the statewide goals. We added a finding statement or statements for each goal, followed by policy statements. Where appropriate, the findings and policies were updated to reflect current Oregon revised statute, administrative rule, case law, or current planning practices. Some had narrative. In cases where that narrative needed to be added to, it did. In some cases, there was no narrative, which we then added to. We added narrative. And that narrative is just designed to give you a sense of what the intent of the goal is, and to talk about what factors you may have in your community that are important under that goal. The approval criteria are found in the comprehensive plan itself. 7.1/6 is about plan and implementation measure review. This is a very common review measure found in a lot of older comprehensive plans. It basically says you're supposed to review your comprehensive plan regularly, and in response to these things, which are Oregon revised statute, Oregon administrative rule, case law, statewide planning goals, requirements of the city, needs of residential landowners, and then concerns of the county or other affected government units. So again, your plan did not have a thorough review since its last adoption in 2005, and it appears as though that 2005 update was incredibly narrow. So this has been done again to create that conformity with those things that I just identified. I think an important component to identify is that we did try to address the North Gate and the fact that the city is growing. If you just drive through our region, you will see that we're seeing a lot of growth. From what I can tell in the work I do in the region, every small city is experiencing some level of development pressure. And I think you're feeling that too. You're feeling it with the North Gate proposal, with the Stella Estates proposal. And so now it's, okay, how do we manage all this, including the recent annexation of additional land adjacent to North Gate that is owned by Scott and Mary Madison. So there's a lot of things that could potentially happen. Having a good, solid, comprehensive plan to address those concerns will be beneficial. Amendment applications. An amendment to the text of this chapter or to the comprehensive plan can be initiated by a variety of sources. This particular application or this particular process was initiated by the city council through their action of applying for a technical assistance grant from the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So this particular update of not just the comprehensive plan, but also the creation of the new development code and an updated zoning map, or the creation of the zoning map, was initiated by this body in its role as the city council. There were some things that were reflected in the initial grant that we didn't get the full funding, so we modified the tasks and kind of modified what we actually accomplished. as part of the process, again, I'll just, there's some things in here I've already mentioned, but a public advisory committee was appointed. And now we're to the public hearings process that's required through this process. There is a summary of the changes in here, to each of the goals. I'm not gonna review those. We kind of went over those during the joint work session, but again, as questions arise, we can certainly get into those details. This is designed to be pretty high level. 7-1-8 plan amendment, again, says the city council, this is really a procedural piece. What got triggered for notice, and I think Dave said, about 120, letters went out. Specifically, what triggered the notice to adjoining property owners was the change in zoning on the zoning map. And according to this requirement, at least 10 days prior, notice has to be, sent to those adjoining property owners within 250 feet. So the property owner of the subject property that is proposed for change, as well as anybody within 250 feet of that, received notice. What I will say is I did provide Dave 2 lists. One has all of the properties listed on it. The other one was just simply mailing lists. So some people's names showed up 6, 8, 10, 12 times. Other people's names showed up once. And then there were a number of people that had 2 or 3 properties. So, rather than send somebody 12 letters, we just combined those and eliminated the duplications. It still resulted in about 120 notices to folks. So that notice again was triggered because of the changes to the zoning map, not for other reasons. So when somebody says, well, I didn't get notice, then you are not within 250 feet of property that is proposed to have a change in zoning. I want to just make that really clear. Notice was also provided, with this process, when you're ready to start your grievance process, you have to provide notice to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. That was done. And that's what triggers DLCD to review what you're doing and to make comment to it. Copies of the proposed amendment shall be made available for review at least 10 days prior to the city council hearing. They've been available, I believe, since May 19th, which was prior to the joint work session that we held on Monday, 8/27. I will say that we have not made, there were discussions about potential changes at the joint work session. Those changes have not yet been incorporated into the drafts that you can find on the city website. Those captured as we move through this process, there will be more of those. When we get to the point where we're moving a document from your planning commission hearings process to your city council hearings process, we will make those we will update the documents and we'll make those available. There's some things that you have to do within 10 days of the close of the city council meeting that are in here. But in this particular change aspect, no change in the urban growth boundary is proposed. This process does acknowledge recent annexations in the Northgate area, but no new annexations are being considered now. And then once this is completed, we will need to submit this to Umatilla County for consideration and adoption based on the current joint management agreement. And that's something that can happen post-adoption. Copies of the plan amendments adopted by the city shall be sent to the county and the LCDC within 10 days. Again, that's just a procedural piece. And then the staff report concludes the last several pages with an actual analysis of the proposal under the statewide planning rules. So again, I want to keep kind of the review of staff reports really high level. That's what the staff report says. And again, we will include the actual comprehensive plan documents during the joint work session. You've been provided 2 comprehensive plans. You've been provided a red line version and then a clean version, just because sometimes it's hard to read a red line. And the clean version would be context for what is proposed. The red line can show you where those proposed changes are at. Next, I'm going to hit on the zoning map staff report. The summary of, again, just an introductory information on front. Again, I kind of shared what the concerns are with the current zoning map, like there's not one, but we're gonna get you there and then get you to a proposed zoning map. It was an interesting endeavor. I thought that the conversations around, well, no, this property should be that, or no, that property should be this. I mean, I think there was some interesting dialogue at PAC meetings around the zoning map. As sorry, Counselor, for your last name, Anderson, identified the property between the two canals. That was the one holdout of the zoning map discussion about what to do with that property. Again, we discussed that at the joint work session. I'm not going to get into that. The staff report kind of goes through the same phase. There's a summary of the changes. And then the amendments here come out of your Title IX, authorization to initiate amendments. Again, a technical assistance grant was requested and approved to make these changes. And again, as part of the grant process, the PAC was appointed. There's a requirement here again for public hearings. And again, a lot of these issues in here are less about a standard or a requirement and more about process. There are some conditions for granting amendments. They have to conform with the adopted transportation system plan. In addition, the applicant must show that the proposed change conforms to the comprehensive plan. We're definitely trying to make sure that we create that crosswalk between your zoning map, your development code, and your comprehensive plan. We want to make sure that those things are consistent. Conformance. So again, going back to the transportation system plan, law today also requires concurrence with the transportation planning rule. And again, I believe we've shown we can do that for the most part because we're not making these significant changes to the map. And the changes to the development code are in many cases a refinement or an update to comply with current standards or statutes. So for the staff report, we determined that it will not create changes to the regular traffic pattern or impact within the city limits. And staff found that the standards were not applicable. Now we could go in and analyze those, but I think we would find that we're compliant with them, whichever way we approach that. Again, we went through and analyzed the proposed map against the 14 statewide planning goals. And again, for time, I'm trying to just kind of move through this kind of quickly, so my apologies. The last staff report is the staff report for the development code. Again, there's kind of two parts to the development code. There's the titles that we're proposing to be struck, removed, and replaced with the proposed development code. So again, some background, summary of the changes. There is available, I believe it has also been posted to the website. There's an audit that was accomplished. It was provided to you. It's an audit of the current zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. I think that's an important piece to look at. The proposed development code is presented in 5 chapters, which look at general administration, land use districts, design standards, administration of land use and development permits, and then exceptions to code standards. The approval criteria and process. So again, some of these you've seen before. Only this time we're applying it to the development code, not to the map. So authorization to initiate amendments, again, initiated by the city with the request for the technical assistance grant. Public hearings, again, this is mostly procedural. Conditions for granting amendments shall conform with the adopted transportation system plan. And again, we determined that it does. It also conforms with the comprehensive plan. We started with the comprehensive plan in the past, we made changes, and then we went back to the comprehensive plan about halfway through and said, okay, is there anything that's missing in the comprehensive plan based on the changes we've been talking about? And we did that one final time at the end when we made some final changes to the comprehensive plan relative to Northgate and then Timeless Western. As well as adding some specific information about the golf course. There's been a lot of conversation about the golf course as a recreational asset and about the future opportunity to potentially grow the golf course from 9 holes to 18. And even the potential to add, the opportunity for homes on the golf course. And so we added some things to the comprehensive plan. We didn't get into detail in the comprehensive plan because, yeah, that's out there a ways. And it's like, well, don't draw your box yet, but open the door so that you can make that next step with the golf course, and you have a comprehensive plan that supports that. So if a grant opportunity comes up, you can say, yes, it's in our comprehensive plan. Yes, we want to grow our golf course, those types of things. So we did go back several times and kind of crosswalk the development code changes back to comprehensive plan. So then again, the amendment may be initiated by the city council. So for the development code itself, we actually are analyzing it against both the standards in your current Title 8 and your current Title 9. Because we are replacing both your zoning and your subdivision ordinance. So both of those are in there. It's somewhat redundant, because they're similar, but they're not exact. And then the staff report ends, again, with an analysis of the 14 statewide planning goals.
Is that all you have?
I think, I think that's an appropriate answer.
Very well. Would it be prudent to have Dawn add anything to that from the DLCD?
I think it would, yes.
Okay, Dawn, would you like to add to the staff report? This is Dawn Hurt from the DLCD, from the state office of land use.
Mayor. Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn Hurt. I am the Eastern Oregon Regional Rep for the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I cover the 10 most eastern counties in Oregon. My office is located at EOU, and I actually have a home office in the Dalles, so I was born and raised Eastern Oregon. Glad to be here tonight. First, I want to say great job to the TAC as well as the commission to get moving forward on initiating these code amendments. As Carla mentioned, we did provide funding from the Department of Land Conservation and Development. The original grant did have a larger scope. That was then not, there were some changes and some modifications that happened. So it's far less, I think it was more just the mapping, wasn't it, Carla? Was that the one things that we took out? Funding has been submitted for reimbursement. So we are in the midst of processing that. The one difference in terms of what was originally set for the scope of work as well as what was produced was that we would have the document completed by the end of May. And as we know, we're past that date. So that's fine. The way that we have been taking a look at it the last few years is we want a hearings ready document, which is what you have, and that's what we're doing tonight. To specifically answer the questions to Carla regarding periodic review, this was not a periodic review task. Many years ago, well, actually it's still in the ORS, we are required communities to do what we call a periodic review, which is basically what you guys are doing here. It's a full analysis review of your comprehensive plan. It's supposed to be done every 10 years. And a few years back, the legislation pulled funding for that task to be completed, or for those tasks to be completed. So we at DLCD took a step back and we could not fund it. And we didn't want to put that burden onto these smaller communities to have to come in and fund their own periodic review. So what we've been doing is encouraging people to either do comprehensive plan amendments, which is what you guys are doing right now, and or having people also do what they call a voluntary periodic review, which you can piecemeal it out for certain goals, and or you can do a full overview. This was not reviewed through a periodic review task. And as Carla mentioned, a periodic review task would have to go before the Land Conservation and Development Commission. That was not how we looked at this. So this is appealable. So in this sense, if somebody is unhappy with the final decision that's made by City Council, it can be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals. And that would be the process in order to have any amendments and or reviews at that local or at that higher level. I don't think I have anything more unless you guys have questions for me.
Yeah, great. See you later.
Okay.
Thank you, Dawn.
I do have two letters that were submitted that are comments that aren't included here tonight, so I would like.
First off, I'd like to say thank you to you guys because it's clear you guys all have individual beliefs on what the changes are. And that's exactly what I voted for, to make sure we're actually doing our job as a council and city to ensure that Echo is growing in the right way and how we want it to happen. I met with the owners of the properties between the canals with the permit that will have their properties changed by the permanent open space being rezoned to residential. We are all in agreement that we support this happening for a few reasons, mainly because we are paying taxes on this. There were some misunderstandings that we were being exempt. However, I called the county today, the tax assessor's office, and asked specifically to look into my home along with the adjacent ones to determine exactly what was happening. And they said there was no exemptions and we are paying the full tax at hand. In addition to that, I think the growth that could occur, which is unlikely to, because I did speak to everybody and there was no current plans to build into the canal, mainly because we understand that the canal is open and it would require quite a bit of money to ensure stability is, the required stability is there. It should be an option and something that if we did want to pursue in the future, we have that opportunity. And I just want to make sure that the council is aware of where we all stand as people who are affected by the changes in the permanent open space.
Thank you, Mike. Hey, anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Lily Rose, mailing address, PO Box 326, here in Echo. I was part of the technical advisory committee and was able to work with several members of the council on this project. I am speaking in favor of what is being proposed to the community because we spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears working on this for the last 10 months. So there's definitely not, we're not going to please everybody. That's impossible. We did the best we could to get to the point that we are now. And in looking at all of the information, I feel like maybe it still isn't the ending point, but this is the best that we can offer at this point. So I just ask that you take that into consideration, the time that everyone has spent working on this, because truly, I feel that the time spent has been in the interest of the community and trying to figure out all of those different little pieces to do the best we could to represent our community, to represent ourselves as homeowners, as business owners. And I wasn't part of the last couple of months just because I was out of town. But what we have, I do think is solid. And I appreciate Carla's guidance in this process because we needed it. we're a group of people who don't do this daily, and trying to figure out how to navigate that has definitely had its challenges. But I would like to think that, this group really has everyone's interests at heart. And I hope that you just consider that for what it's worth. So thank you.
Thank you, Marie. And one thing I may have forgotten to mention, I'm sorry, hasn't affected these previous two speakers, but I do have a timer set for 5 minutes. That is the limit to comment. So sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. Anyone else in favor? Wish to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am.
Phyllis Shanelsky, P.O. Box 127, 221 West Mead. I really appreciate what you all have done. I know it's difficult for all of us and change is never easy. I feel as if what we don't control will control us. We have growth. We're seeing it in Hermiston. I had a business in Tri-Cities, and I can't tell you the massive changes in that area in 18 years. And we're lucky we're not going through massive changes, but things are changing and have been changing. We're not always going to all agree, but I do appreciate what you've done. And I know that this is in the best interest of the community.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else wish to comment in favor? Okay, so Carla there was two folks that submitted written testimony, and I'll have Carla read those now. Go ahead, Carla.
So the first one is from Kent Madison. It's addressed to Dave. I reviewed the updated comp plan and in agreement with all of it except for the open space policy. Your definition of open space, 2.5.100, purpose of the open space district. The open space district is designed to acknowledge flooding impacts on certain lands within the city of Echo and determine uses on that land that would be consistent with floodplain restrictions. Then it goes on and says, this is proper and useful to protect building and structures in a floodplain, yet the zoning map shows land outside the floodplain as open space. I would suggest that the zone map be changed to show the lower canal right of way as open space and the space of the land above and including the upper canal as residential zone land. This would provide access for a future public walking path from the main part of town connected to the land currently owned by Echo between the canals. It would also allow the current landowners who own that land to develop it into residential space and increase the tax base of the community while allowing public access along the old lower canal right of way. This zoning change would also connect Echo and Stanfield via the lower canal for the future Umatilla Trail. Thanks. K&L Northgate LLC, 299 Madison Road, Echo, Oregon, Camden Laura Madison Developers. The second one is from James Young. He does not include his address here, but he was a member of the PAC. To City Council and citizens of Echo from James Young. I'm writing this to share my thoughts on the proposed comprehensive plan because I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. As a member of the advisory committee to redo the comp plan and address the development codes, the city hired Carl McLean, a contract planner, to assist us. I found her to be very skilled at her job and was able to lead us through the process extremely well. We as an advisory committee put what I feel is a very good plan together. This plan is not written in stone and can be modified by the city council as needed. I do feel that the city council should adopt the plan knowing that changes can be made if needed. As we went through this process, I became aware that the changes proposed did not affect current property owners, but did require future development to follow the new plan. At the last meeting, there was a lot of concern about a possible zone change along the two canals. I feel this would be a good change and only affect the property owners that are paying taxes on that land. I do not feel this would affect anyone else in a negative way. I also would not like to see the city of Echo have to repay the $60,000 grant. This would be an expense to every taxpayer in Echo. Makes no sense. James W. Young.
Thank you, Carla.
Mhm.
Okay, last call for, anyone wishing to testify in favor of the application. Okay, and we will move on. Does anyone wish to testify in opposition of the application? Yes, ma'am.
Eugenia Hampton, 811 East G Street, here in Echo. I understand change needs to be. Obviously, we can't stay stagnant or we don't grow. But what I don't understand is why there was never a survey of anybody else's opinion beside those on the committee. And my biggest complaint is, why are we changing a golf course to residential? Are we trying to get rid of it so we have more houses? Why do we need more houses everywhere since we have a very small school? Even though we're going to build more, it's already full. So if we keep adding and adding and adding, then the open spaces will be gone, obviously, but where are we going to put all the people? And I do appreciate hard work. It is hard to sit through a lot of mumbo jumbo and trying to keep up with the state. And the other thing is, why do we change the church to a, I've forgotten what they changed it to, but it's a nonprofit. Why would they be changed to a business? I guess we're in the business of saving souls, but I don't think that's monetarily. Anyway, when you ask people, I mean, even if you don't have a lot of people on the committee, the survey would be nice. This is what we're looking at. What do you think? Get your input before we have to come here and people are complaining, because we are upset. I heard about the meetings, but it was never open enough that you could come and say, well, gee, how come you're doing this? And we never could get an answer. It was always, well, we'll put it into consideration. You got 5 minutes to tell us. And that's fine. I agree. Keep it on a really tight schedule. And I'm really kind of getting tired of hearing the threat. If we don't do this, we're going to have to repay the grant. You can change it to you make the people happy, and then they wouldn't be upset with it and would say, oh, go ahead and vote for it. We're fine with that. So that threat is getting a little old. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Vicente Escalante, mailing PO Box 2. I live at 310 North Wilson Street. I myself was a part of the PAC committee, and we did, for the most part, I think, put in some good work. But at the same time, I don't believe that there was full transparency to the community. We're in 2025. I think after COVID, we all learned the beauty of Zoom meetings and being able to record meetings and stuff. During the course of all these meetings that we had, it wasn't up until the last couple meetings that they were recorded. So that way people in the public could know what was discussed, or if they had some input. I discovered just from my own doing that the state has its own comprehensive plan that it wants cities to work off of, not copy to a T, but kind of use as essentially a playbook. And I discovered that on my own. And that bit of information wasn't provided to the committee members to be like, hey guys, this is the state's comprehensive plan. We should be working off of this, but put in our own kind of twist for our own town. That wasn't presented by our consultant or our state rep, unfortunately. And so I went ahead and did today. I didn't manage to get as many houses as I liked to, but it was kind of warm. But I did like a resident survey, asking 2 simple questions. One, in the last 18 months, were you informed about rewriting or updating the City of Echo's comprehensive plan? And the second question was, are you familiar with a city's comprehensive plan and its impact on the city and its residents? I only managed to give about 23 people, but I went around town, both that side of the tracks, this side, kind of ran out of time to be able to get some of the other key spots, but about 90% of the individuals that I went to all said, no, they had no idea of any of this was going on. All that to say, throughout this course, I was constantly checking the city's website, seeing if there was like updates to meetings and stuff, so people could be informed. It wasn't until I think a couple weeks ago or so that I saw on the city website that all the information was just posted on there, just like, bloop. And I found that very strange. And then there was also like meeting summary. So I have all the email traffic, and there wasn't any discussion with the committee members about these meetings, about these minutes and stuff to kind of like go over stuff. And so all that to say, I mean, I'm a property owner. I mean, we're all property owners. What you want to do on your property, I mean, hey, what you want to do with it, you pay your taxes. I completely agree with that. But I don't believe that this is a product that we should be passing. I think there's a lot of good things to it, but I think it needs a little bit more work and input from the community, because the community didn't get that. They just weren't told. Every month we get our water bill. And I talked to the post office and they said that it has to go out to Portland and come back because it's a big mass thing. So it takes about 3 days. And so these meetings that we were having, they could have been put on the back of the water bill, like saying, hey, this is a meeting, TBA, could be, because it would change occasionally, but at least letting the people know, hey, that there's this public forum for this big thing that's happening. But that wasn't done. And I feel like we failed just the residents to be able to say, hey, like this is open. All that being said, I think we did some good things, but I don't think it's ready right now. So I don't, as a PAC member, I only missed 2 meetings that I don't believe that we should pass this right now. I think it just needs to be worked a little bit more with more community input. That's what I got.
Thank you, Vicente. Hey, anyone else wish to speak against? Yes, sir. You can do it.
I'm Jerry Gowan. I live at 100 North Dupont. And I'm here in regards to Ethel Church because I'm a member there. And that church was built in 1886. It's been there for 139 years. And we like to keep the church there longer. But I can't understand why it's been changed to commercial. And I see where the city hall and also the fire station went commercial. And that's what I'm concerned about the church. I hope that church be here another 100 years from now. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Mervis, who live at 27 Front Street. And I own the property next door to that too, the 2021 West Bridge Street. And I just noticed on the map, it looks like my house and my property is now commercial. I want to know how that's going to affect my tax rates. I didn't know anything about it. You said you sent out letters to people who were going to be affected by that. You know, crickets. I got nothing. Disappointed, to say the least.
Can I ask you, can you repeat your address again?
20 South Front Street and 21 West Bridge. And I had plans, once I paid everything off, to do some more improvements on properties. And I don't think I'll be able to do that if it's zoned commercial now, you know. I mean, where am I? I have no idea where I'm sitting, since nobody let me know what's going on. I'm very disappointed. Do you have an answer?
This isn't a time to discuss back and forth. It's only a time for us to ask clarifying questions.
All right, I just want to let you know I'm very disappointed.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Carla, did we have any letters to that effect?
No,
Okay. For written testimony, I guess I should state.
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, Dave, nothing, okay. All right, then, seeing as there is no further testimony in opposition, we'll move forward. Anybody wish to testify that are not in favor or in opposition, or would like to ask questions? Yes, ma'am.
Katie Barthel, 330 West Holstead. But I'm not really in favor or for or against the comprehensive plan, because as I said before, I think like we need the growth. We need to steadily grow at a pace that ECHO can keep up with. I would just like to see more work done throughout this process. Kind of just to go off of what Vicente said, I just think there should have been more community involvement. I mean, goal number one is citizen involvement. I don't think that was met. And I just think there's some contradicting things within the city code plans that could take further look in. I appreciate everybody's hard work. I appreciate council, the PAC, Dave, Carla, Dawn. I know I've been pretty vocal. I've raised some questions and I've sent some emails. I've definitely done my due diligence, and I have read quite a bit of the plan word for word, page for page. It's a lot of pages. Not every community member is going to be able to do that. So I think maybe some more working sessions before we adopt this. But maybe the PAC, if they're willing to come back and help, and the council would be beneficial to everybody, especially if there's any clarifying, because there are some things I had to research a lot. I had to look things up. I didn't understand them. So I just think it would be beneficial to see the council work on this more before we adopt it. So again, I'm not against, I'm not for, don't care what, I mean, people should do what they want with their property. Don't really care. I just care that the process is done correctly and it's done right. So that's my biggest issue with the whole thing, with what it feels like their lack of transparency, the lack of due diligence. I just like to see moving forward that we can work together as a community and council, and that we can just push this forward and work together and regain our trust in one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Anyone else wish to speak to that matter? Not in favor, not in opposition? Or have any, ask questions? We won't be able to answer them immediately, but we can certainly get to them. The discussion, yes, ma'am.
Gina Stater, 33229 Marble Street, Echo. I just want to state a concern. I'm concerned about the open spaces. I'm just concerned that we got a lot of very few open spaces left in Echo. We've got my parents' field, we've got my grandparents' field, and very few left. And I feel like the landscape of Echo will be changing, and I don't. That's the only piece.
Thank you, Gina. Hey, anyone else? Okay, seeing as there's no, okay, wait a minute. We gotta go to, okay. Do any of those in favor of the application wish to rebut argument from the opponents? No? Okay.
Yeah, here, we can understand you, but oh, well, that's.
Okay, sorry. Does any of those in favor of the application, is that better, Jeannie? Okay. Wish to rebut argument from the opponents? Okay, so seeing as none, then we move on. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Tammy.
So have we heard from any of the, do we need to hear from any of the public works or the irrigation districts or anything like this of this decision?
If they had,
I couldn't hear your question.
Do we need to hear from the public works on these decisions, or do they have any comments, or the irrigation districts? Do we need to have any clarification of anything about the canal, since this is a new issue? I mean, if there is anybody here that is the irrigation district, I would really appreciate if I could hear them.
Not one thing about this.
Thank you.
okay, so is, yes.
So I think I would appreciate that if we could hear from some of the agencies, because there's also at least some type of the agencies that will be affected with these commissions. Do we not have to, is that not something that we need to look at, or is that okay? I don't know.
So I guess then, if I ask but then that moves us into deliberations, which is the next section, correct? We've kind of jumped ahead a little bit. According to my script, I had to skip. Do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision? I guess that yes or no. So Tammy, I take it, then your answer would be no.
I think it would be no.
Okay. Jamie, Jesse,
Yeah, I think
Maria.
a little more no at this time.
Okay.
No at this time.
Just
10 out of 10. I'm willing to deliberate and talk about it.
Richard.
Always want more.
It's very good. Okay. Now we got that procedural thing out of the way. I'm just trying to stay the script. It was yellow, don't stay on script. So is the commission ready for deliberations? So now now I guess we are ready for deliberations, and so now we can address Tammy's concerns.
Well, first of all, what I heard was that they aren't prepared to proceed.
Is that right? Did I misconstrue that? I'm sorry.
That was my impression. The council members or planning commission members said they aren't prepared to proceed.
So do we not want to have deliberations?
You can continue to have deliberations. I think it's important to focus on some of the issues that I would highlight would be that I've heard comments. I just want to stress for the record that this should go back to the Public Advisory Committee. I think that should not occur as my recommendation, because I think if there are concerns, which some have been noted, some have been noted in favor, if there's a concern about public involvement, that's the point of this process. And I laud you all for being here to participate and hear and be involved in what's going on. So I think that first of all, as the city attorney, I would not recommend that this be referred back to a public advisory committee or anything like that. I think the best course of action for the city, depending on what this group wants to decide, they have a tough job, obviously, that you people that are involved and the rest of the community members that are here or that aren't here that wish to be involved, be given every opportunity to comment, review, and have your input within this proceeding and process in a public open meeting that's recorded and of record. So I think that's the most important thing from advice to the city that I would give. There's no rush to decision if that's what the council wants to do or commission wants to do, or they can decide this. That's entirely up to them.
So would that be considered like a city council work session?
No, what I'm saying is the options for the planning commission are to approve the plans as submitted based upon the staff reports. They're to approve them with alternatives or recommended changes. Or the third alternative, in my opinion, would be not to refer it back to a public advisory committee, but to adjourn this hearing for further input and consideration. Those, I think, are your three options.
So for this further input and consideration, who would be involved in that? How would that happen? Just with
This hearing would be adjourned. You could come here, voice their concerns. There could be deliberations, discussions.
so
about those issues.
other public meetings.
Another meeting just as this is.
Okay.
Another planning commission.
Yes, unless you vote to refer it on to the council at this point in time.
And if we were to refer it on to the council, then the council would continue to hear from the public.
The council would have to have a public hearing.
Correct.
As scheduled.
And the council could potentially make changes or amendments to the document at that point in time as well. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure it's clear because
No,
it's
that's
a
a good
confusing process. And
Yes. I agree.
This is our first legislative hearing.
So you could either keep it at this level, right?
Uh,
Or you could recommend to the council and have this hearing again and then continue on that hearing and deliberations until you satisfy yourself that you've had all the public input and that, more importantly, that the public feels like they've had their input.
And the agencies.
Well,
So
if they want to appear and testify, they can.
Hang on, man.
When you say agencies, so what agencies? are you speaking?
The irrigation district. We just need to make sure that we don't.
I heard a discussion about whether they did or didn't get noticed, but
Yeah, just so that we don't.
there's an issue there, I think.
I'm not disagreeing to the people here with open space. If they want it, they sound like they're all in agreement. That is that is their property. My concern in coming into this was that there was a lot of people that were very concerned, and did not feel like they had enough information. And we didn't even know the names of the people that were on this. So, but if the people are for it, that is great. But we do want to make sure that we don't have any people coming back at us, like irrigation district, because we have stepped out of our realm and they come back at us because they don't even know about it. They need to know about it.
Well, he's here now and he can be
Yeah.
involved in the future.
Yeah.
If that's the decision.
I liked what you said about giving the public more involvement, so the public feels more comfortable with this and trust us more and transparency more, because I feel like the last couple of meetings that we have lost everybody's trust. And I hope we can regain it with some transparency and your input.
So the concerns that were addressed from the public, is it appropriate to discuss those amongst ourselves at the public forum right now?
Yes, and you can ask that to respond. where they
Okay,
can.
so I just wanted to, okay, I don't want to be breaking any procedural.
No, you're not.
That's
You
the
can talk.
whole point.
Yeah.
Katie will be all over me, I promise you, right, Katie? But I mean that in jest.
Mayor, in this one, you're gonna talk to staff.
Okay.
And staff would be myself, it would be your attorney, it would be your city administrator, it would be your police chief, if you had anything to participate in.
So, the folks in support, obviously, we're in support. They mentioned the space between the canal. We had some private landowners that seem to have gotten together, that have been paying full-on taxes on that. They can't do anything with that property the way it is currently zoned. So it's just kind of sits, but yet they pay the full-on taxes like the rest of us do. And so their concern is that, and that they would like that to be changed so that they potentially could have more use of their private property. Is there anything you'd like to comment in addition to that?
No, I think that's a correct question, a correct statement. I don't think there's anything that the folks who testified in support, that I would necessarily respond to. I mean.
Could you give us a kind of a rundown of, does open space really fit in the city, or what's its use and purpose, I guess?
So open space is usually a designation that you see attached to land that is owned by a public entity. So, a park could be open space, and I will get to there were people in office who didn't raise questions, we will eventually get to that. But usually when you see open space designation, it is, it's where the county has acquired the right of way for a, walking trail. And it's available to the public, or maybe open space is, maybe there's a community park, that you want to identify as open space. It's usually attached to something that is, not privately owned, because, an open space designation assumes public access. And when it's in private ownership, that's kind of counter to, you know, I own this land and no, it's not available for you to traverse. So, you usually see those open space designations attached again to federal lands, state lands. It could be attached to city parks and city amenities as well.
Places that are open, fully open to the public to access.
As well as wildlife.
Right. If you have it, let's just say adjacent to your community or as part of your community, you have a land that was owned by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it was available for whether it be wildlife viewing or hunting, and open space designation would be appropriate.
And then, I have a question that has to do with the irrigation ditches. Just because it's rezoned to something different or stays the same, they still have easement on that. They don't lose easement.
Absolutely.
So that's why
Yes, absolutely. An easement does not change that entity interest in that property.
Right. Okay.
But the open space designation could be misleading to people who look at the map and go, oh, that's open space. I can walk on that, or I can, when it's in private ownership. But you're absolutely correct. The easements that are in place by both of the irrigation ditch companies would not change based on the zone.
And I would want to stress for the record, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Carla, that if there were a change from open space and the landowners chose to develop that, the irrigation district would get notice of that, have their input on the development and how it impacts their easement rights.
I'm sorry, not. Public comment is closed. Thank you. Okay, so I think then that takes care of the issues that were brought up in support section. Keeping kind of on the zoning, I guess we could talk about a couple of things that were brought up. And Carla, if you want to take this section over, you're more than welcome to do so, but.
No, sure. You want me to kind of respond?
Unless you want me to kind of go through these and you can respond.
So I took some notes, so if I miss something there, please prompt me, I'll just kind of work through these as the order I took my notes. So one of the questions was why a survey? A survey wasn't scoped, it wasn't part of the project. I'm not saying that a survey wouldn't have been helpful or beneficial, but it was not part of the project. So it wasn't anticipated when the grant was submitted, it just wasn't anticipated. I'm gonna lump a couple of the zoning questions together. So a question came up about changing the zoning for the golf course, the zoning for the church. The church one came up twice. And then there was a home on the corner of Front and Bridge. Now there's 4 corners on the corner of Front and Bridge. What I can tell you is nothing changed on those 4 corners. So if he's on the south side of Bridge, it's residential, it has been residential. If he's on the north side of Bridge, it's proposed to be commercial and it has been commercial. So there's no changes on that particular corner. So, it would be interesting to maybe talk a little bit with him later and figure out what the specifics are. The golf course and the church, and I'll just address the school and the cemetery and the city hall, just address them all. So there are 3 properties that I recommended be zoned for residential purposes and then identify those as uses within the residential area. That's the cemetery, that's the golf course, and that's the school district, the school properties. The reason for that is that those are usual and customary uses that can be cited within a residential zone. Was the intent to convert the golf course to houses? No, that was never the intent. The intent was to open an opportunity, particularly at the point in time that the golf course could expand to 18 holes, to at least have an opportunity to have houses on a golf course. Not houses replace a golf course, but houses on a golf course. So I want to be really clear about that. There's no intent here to get rid of the golf course. In fact, we actually added language to the comprehensive plan that talks about the recreational benefits that the golf course provides. Not just recreational benefits, but economic benefits the golf course absolutely.
And on that point, the council has worked on that point. Thank you, Dave. The council has worked diligently in improving the golf course and putting a large investment into maintaining the golf course and promoting the golf course. So,
right,
yeah.
Right. And we made, I'll double check one more time, but as we added the golf course as a use to the residential zone, we did identify it as a conditional use. So when the golf course expands, they will have to come and get a conditional use. And in that process, when we added the language to the comprehensive plan, we also had conversation about future, the economic opportunities that could also be adjacent to the golf course, like maybe a retail space. We certainly have authorized that the current clubhouse and pro shop and those current things that are there would be allowed. But at the point kind of growth, that there would be further consideration about that. We open that door to that future opportunity.
So why do you have to open it now?
I'm sorry, Jeannie, your public comment is closed.
That's why you have that communication. Yeah.
Jeannie, you were mayor, you know the public comment is
I
closed.
could leave, that's fine.
So, so the objective with the comprehensive plan again is to just identify what a future vision might be. And it's a placeholder in there. At the point in time, if the city either enters into a public-private partnership or gets a grant to do some kind of improvements to the golf course, you're gonna have to revisit your comp plan. Probably, you're gonna be going through a UGB expansion and annexation. I mean, there'd be a lot of planning that would happen at that point in time. And again, as the attorney indicated, that's all subject to the same kind of public hearing and the same kind of opportunity for public involvement. As to the church, so those were the things up on the upper side, cemetery as well. Again, create an opportunity within the residential district. On this side, in the commercial area, it was the fire hall, the church, and the city hall, and the park adjacent. It was an effort to simplify your zoning, simplify the proposed development. We did in the end leave open space as an option. And that open space is applicable on the proposed map to 2 properties. They're both along the river. Everything else that was outside of that area, there were 2 previous zones. One was the open space, and then the other one was just I don't remember what it said on the map, public space or public something. And it was really just all property that was owned by some entity that was not a private entity. But there again, it didn't include all things that would be owned by something that wasn't a private person. And so it's really about a simplification of your development code. Again, acknowledging that Echo is a small community. You want your zoning ordinance to be, simple where it can be. And so by making those properties consistent with the zoning around them, it doesn't change. again, those uses are allowed. A fire hall and a city hall are allowed in a commercial zone. They were previously. I mean, it begs the question, why were they excluded previously? There was no regulations attached to that public zone. And so there were no regulations about, well, if the city hall needed to be modified or changed. There were no regulations that would have regulated how that would have happened. Now that it's part of the commercial zone, if a use allowed, I don't remember the standards that would be applicable. I don't remember if it's a use allowed or use allowed conditionally, but it's allowed and it would go through any kind of developer review that would be attached to it. Same would be the case for the fire hall or for the church. Nobody has advocated that the church should go away. If it's been there over 100 years, I hope it's standing for another 100 years. Maybe you'll come to town and go to church there some Sunday. So, and the change in the zoning should not impact the taxation. In fact, the city hall and the fire hall are both exempt. I believe the cemetery is exempt as a special district from taxes. I believe that the golf course, as a municipally owned golf course, is exempt from taxation. And then again, same thing for the school district property. So, and the church as a historic building, as well as I believe a religious building, have certain tax exemption opportunities as well. If they haven't taken advantage of them, I would encourage them to do that. So again, there's nothing nefarious in this. There's no objective to say, oh my gosh, we don't want the church here anymore or anything like that. It was a mechanism to identify uses that didn't have a use zone. There was no regulation attached to them. There was no acknowledgement of how they were authorized or how they would be modified. Now that they're in a zone, there would be a process to review for that.
And just to be clear, just because they're in that zone doesn't mean they have to go remodel the church. If this gets approved tomorrow, or the day after it gets, it stays the way it is until it disappears, correct?
Right. And I would also say that in, I think it's goal 5, yes, goal 5. There wasn't a lot in your previous comprehensive plan about the history of ECHO. Under goal 5, we added some things about the history of ECHO. But we did identify that ECHO needs to go through the process of inventorying your historic assets. I think that Diane Barrett, and she was city manager for many years, has done a good job of that. But you don't have either in your current development code or in other ordinances that we've been able to identify where you have adopted those provisions that would say this is how a historic property is protected and this is how you would modify a historic property. And that's a requirement of the state. I mean, at some point in time, there's going to have there'll be a push me pull me, and the city will need to figure out how to kind of up their game relative to those historic properties. So the comprehensive plan recognizes them and indicates that that process should happen. It's one of the policy statements that's a part of your comprehensive plan. So again, we're not trying to disrespect those properties. We actually, I think, work very hard to create respect for those properties and create a future path. So I've covered the home, I've covered the church, I've covered the cemetery, I did the survey. The other piece here was about, and that came out again in the neutral testimony about more involvement. Again, the PAC met for about 10 months. It was designed to represent the community. If there was a sense the meetings were closed, you know, my apologies for that. That's not my intent. I don't believe it was Dave's intent either. I didn't get those questions about, hey, you know, I'm not here. I'm not in a place where I would hear those questions. But again, I will just echo what Mr. Blanc said, that this is the point for full-on public involvement. This is the opportunity for people to make comment, for you then to take the opportunity to deliberate about that comment, ask staff for clarifying questions when you have them. We will do our best to answer those questions, again, to the best of our ability. I think the last comment that I have here that I would that I would respond to, that you probably asked me about, is the open space. So currently on your map, there are 3 places that are identified as open space. And interestingly enough, they are all in private ownership, all of them. They should, if you follow the true requirements of the true kind of, why do we call something open space? I would say none of them should be zoned open space. But one of the property owners advocated to retain the open space on their property. The 2 pieces where we are maintaining the open space, they are heavily impacted by the floodplain, the floodplain mapping. And so it was like, okay, we'll maintain the open space for those 2 properties, but if you're seeking open space, and this did come up, in fact, I believe that it was Councilmember Holden who clearly stated at a meeting that if the city wants open space and wants to protect it, then the city should invest in that. And you were advocating, she was advocating strongly for a program that could do that. And again, that could be an outcome of this process. Look at the comprehensive plan. Is there a place in there under goal 5 where you talk about figuring out how to invest in open space? But if you're looking to preserve what's there, currently all of the open space that's mapped is privately owned. All of it.
Yeah, I remember Jason's comment. Yes.
I just on the side, I was reading, about open space, and, owners of open space can go to the county tax office and ask for tax reductions on open space. In Oregon, I read that.
Would you use the Viking?
Oh,
Say that again, please.
okay, I was reading, some of the rules about taxation of Oregon.
Oh, sure.
I was reading Oregon law, a little bit about, open space. And owners of open space may go to their local taxing districts, Umatilla taxing district in our case, and get a significant reduction in their taxes. But then if they turn them into residential, their taxes will rise.
If they've got a reduction.
Right, but they are allowed to go get the reduction if they would like to. It's just something to just look at.
I think that, Mary, if there was anything else that you captured that I missed,
With the notes I have, you covered everything.
okay.
Does any other council member have any other notes that Carla should address? But I do think it's important that we address those concerns and make sure we're all educated fully on that before we make a decision. So I appreciate your vision, Carla. It's a very daunting document. I've read it, not that I wanted to, but I have read it, and it does get confusing at times. And so it does take asking questions and research and getting good, solid information from somebody in the know. Because I could search the internet and find all sorts of conflicting information, but somebody that's been through it, like, and the DLCD does this for a living, having their expertise has just been invaluable.
So I would share one thing, and again, Mr. Blanc can add his statement to this as well. Procedurally, we have noticed 2 public hearings. We have noticed tonight's public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, and we have noticed the July 8th public hearing in front of the City Council. Now, you can preserve that notice and not create additional expense for the city to provide notice again to those property owners by, when you make your choice tonight, if you continue this meeting to that already noticed date and time specific, then you can preserve that notice. At that point in time, you can choose to have another hearing if you so choose. And when you do that, if you identify the date, time, and place specific in your motion to continue, you will continue to preserve that notice. So Barry's done, yes, so I think we're on the same page. So there is a way to preserve your notice. And again, not incur that expense, because mailing 120 letters, it adds up over time. So we were able to capture that expense as part of the grant. And so preserving that and making that money stretch as far as possible is good for the city.
Sure. So if that was the option that the planning commission decided on tonight, then would we want to discuss potential amendments to the proposed document to move to the city council, or would we let the city council handle that at that time?
I think that's up to.
Or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't, in the end, you are one and the same, to some degree.
Right.
Maybe to every degree, other than the name that's attached. So I don't know that it matters who does that hard work, because it's the same group that's going to do it. If you were truly a planning commission and were a separate body from your council, I would encourage your planning commission to do the heavy lifting first. But you're not. So at the end of the day, I don't think it matters which body does the heavy lifting. If there's heavy lifting that needs to be done, you're gonna do it.
And the council, then, if this planning commission moves into the council, sorry, a lot of what ifs.
That's why we're here, right?
If the planning commission does recommend this move to the city council, then the city council could have as many public hearings as they deem necessary to arrive at a final product. Is that correct?
I would agree with that, and you could give the public as much notice and opportunity to come before the council, which is the same body as is here today, and actually the final determining body. So you could have full and complete access and openness for the community to come and be involved, and keep the process moving forward at the same time without any other problems.
Because I get the feeling, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but for myself, oh, sorry. You got it.
It's a deliberation, can we talk or?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Thank you very much.
I
I have a couple questions to ask. I never knew, I was on the path and in the city council, and I don't understand why we weren't told these names, even though I'm glad that you want to do it, but why weren't we told who you were sending out letters for on this property, the names and the addresses? We never knew that.
Well, I think Carla can address that, but the people that get the notices, it's based upon what the proposed amendments are, and they have to be within a certain distance to the impacted properties. And so you don't know when you're part of the pack necessarily who those people are gonna be until you get to the decision of what your proposed amendments are gonna be.
Well, it was just interesting, in the last PAC meeting, no decision was really made that we would, I am fine with it if they are with it, but I'm concerned about the process, because on the PAC meeting, it was made after the PAC meeting and the city council didn't know, so who made this decision?
Well, these notices, I think you're talking about.
I'm talking about that, it wasn't even, the zoning change wasn't even made in that PAC meeting, as a recommendation, we were still discussing it. So that's a concern for me, and I just want to go on to that. Oregon State Planning goals, goal number 1 is citizen involvement. And so I heard that from a couple people that they wanted it. I really hope that we take and do not adopt the plan, and we have the public meetings so that the people have the citizen involvement, because I did not see that. And I think some of the people in the community did not see that, because there's and all the stuff that was dumped on, that wasn't on there until all the notes on June 9th, the summaries from Carla. I don't even know, those notes were never presented to us. And conversations that Carla and Dave had, we were never made privy of that. So we were even not in the openness of all the communication. So I feel really uncomfortable not at least extending this, not adopting this plan, but giving the community at least a little time to look at it, to see if they have anything. So what is the rush? I mean, this is a big decision. The last one we made was what, 1978, and it stayed for 50 years. And so the people should have time to look at it. So why can't we just take and postpone this and have another public hearing so that people can look at it again and come forth with any concerns? That doesn't mean that we're not doing the open space and you guys won't get your open space, and that's great. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they have time to look at the plan more, be able to research it. The people that did present that there were problems, they have time to look at it. I don't see what the rush is. And that scares me when I hear a rush, because then I'm wondering why the rush? Because the city should have the community should be able to have public involvement. That is goal number 1 of Oregon State land planning. And there's a reason for that, because it is the most important goal. It's goal number 1. So that's just my concern.
Councilor Williams, my comments about the process, I thought I said that this board or the city council should take as much time as necessary.
Yeah.
So nobody's trying to rush, in my opinion, the process.
You did say that. I appreciate it.
My point was that public hearings are the best place to get the community involved, get their input, rather than a small PAC meeting, public advisory committee meetings. That's why it's open up to all these people to come and get their input. I'm not advocating that there's a rush. I'm advocating that this body, or if it's referred to the council, at the next stage with another public hearing, take all the time necessary to get all the public involved and it feels comfortable with. So nobody from a legal perspective is pushing that.
Thank you.
I want to respond to the comment about notice. So, two things happened in a conversation between myself and Dave and Dawn about the outcome of the last PAC meeting prior to going to the joint work session and moving towards notice. Two comments, two components to that conversation. One was about what notice was required. So a number of years ago, there was a ballot measure 56. And ballot measure, it's in codified statute now, but planners still call it ballot measure 56 because we live and die by it. But ballot measure 56 says that you have to provide notice if you are limiting or restricting somebody's use of property. In the zoning ordinance, we're not. We're actually expanding uses. So ballot measure 56 notice doesn't really get triggered, in that sense. And we talked about that. And then we looked at the map and said, okay, but the map is going to trigger changes. In particular, the properties I talked about, the cemetery, the school, the golf course, the fire station, the church, and city hall and the park. Those were changes to the zoning map. And because there wasn't a clear determination about the potential for the properties that are between the canals that are currently zoned open space, because they might be changed to residential, we erred on the side of that they might, and we added those properties to the list as well. So the properties that were identified to be potentially rezoned, and therefore those that were adjoining to receive notice were the 6 I originally identified, plus the 6 along the canal. Now, because they're in a line and the city property's in there, I think I captured the city property as well. We probably over noticed, but that's where the decision came to provide notice to those. And again, it was based on the changes to the zoning map, not to the zoning ordinance. Now, we also published notice in the East Oregonian, which is also a requirement of your process. I don't know a lot of people who read public notices, but that's a requirement. And we met that one as well. So, hopefully that answers the questions about who received notice and why they received it.
Thank you, Carla.
Mhm.
And I'd just like to add my opinion on the process. I think that I agree with, Tammy in that the public needs time to review this. I would encourage them to review it, even though it is pretty dry at times, and bring their questions and concerns to us. This is your time to speak up, and we're just trying to figure out the best we can, what we think everybody in town wants, and try to make as many people happy as we can. But through this process, we can identify places, hopefully, where we haven't done such a great job of that. Or maybe we've done a really good job of that, and we like to hear it. So I'm not in favor of a rush either, just for the fact that it has been 50 years, and it is a lot of information. And we need to try to get it right. Can it be changed later? Sure, it can be changed at any time. But it has to go through a long, arduous process to change it, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. So let's try to get as much right as we can now. And I think my opinion would be to move this to the city council, the same people sitting here, and have as many public hearings as it takes till we get it right. If that's 1, great. If that's 5, great. But we want to make sure the voices get heard and that the questions get answered and the correct information gets disseminated to the folks of Echo. That would be my recommendation. So I see a lot of head nodding. So do we need a motion to adjourn, or no, to move it to the city council?
So you would adjourn your planning commission public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, and then your motion would be to continue it or recommend that it move forward to the city council for further deliberation. And again, your notice meeting is July 8th at 5 p.m. And even though that meeting has been noticed, I would encourage you, if somebody makes a motion, I would encourage you to incorporate that in the motion so that, again, just get in the habit of preserving your notice.
Okay. And then we can have more meetings after that. That will be noticed just as.
Yep.
That.
Yep. And that hearing would be no, we'd be starting all over again in a lot of respects. So,
Right.
yep.
I
So
would
do
like
we
to
need-
entertain a motion if I could, or do you have to close it?
Do I have to close it, or do we? Okay, so I then close the public hearing on the planning commission.
I would like to make a motion to not adopt this plan at this time and have another public hearing, as many as it takes to allow the company to feel like we have included them in this very, very important decision for the city of Echo.
This is gonna move.
So I don't understand.
They will be-
July. So so move it to the city council. Let me clarify and make sure we're clear. Is that?
My vote is to not adopt the plan at
Correct.
this time, and we will have another public hearing, which we could have on July 8th, to allow for more community involvement.
In front of the city council.
For clarification, would that be the council meeting is scheduled July 8th?
As long as we're not, what would be the difference between a council meeting and a PAC meeting? I mean, a planning commission meeting? How would you
It would
clarify?
just, the same thing, pretty
Same
much. It's,
thing.
as Carla said, it's de novo. So you're starting over.
Okay,
And you go through the same process, which you have to do to make a final determination anyway. And you could have your same deliberations, and at that point, you preserve your notices and the expense that went into that. And then at the council meeting, you could take appropriate action, which would be to approve it, adjourn it, and have more meetings and more public hearings and more public comment and more public input at
what I
that.
think safer, what I'm hearing is to adopt it as the commission, because then it's not moved to a vote next meeting. Because July 8th is only 2 weeks away, because then they'll want to do a public hearing.
No, it'll always see, subject to a vote by the council.
But we'd still be the commission, so we still have to vote for the commission, and then we still have a vote.
No, it would, if it goes to the council, then it's in the council's, so the
Right.
commission's is done.
So why can't we leave it in the planning commission?
The discussion, you can't.
I think we should.
The discussion was whether you wanted to move it to the council, which is the same body, to preserve the notices and everything for the July 8th meeting.
If we leave it as, if I understand what's being said, if we leave it as a planning commission, we have to renotice and we'd have to change the date of the meeting because we wouldn't be able to meet all the notice requirements. So we'd have to notice that it wasn't a council meeting. Then we'd have to notice the new date of the planning commission meeting in order to have, and that date. So that, am I going haywire here?
You're not on the wrong path, you're not on the complete right path, so, you are correct that if you, because it was noticed as a city council hearing, if you don't move it to the city council at this point in time, you can preserve your current notice, your planning commission notice by continuing to July 8th. What you will lose will be your city council notice. And when you get to a city council, you can continue to preserve your city council notice by continuing each planning commission hearing to a date and time specific. When you finally move it to the council, you will have to renotice for the time.
So if we move it to the council tonight,
We preserve.
then we preserve the notice, and then it's easier to continue that meeting as many times as we need to without having to spend a lot of money on notices. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
That's correct.
And the council can have one hearing, or they can have 5 hearings, or, no, I would suggest not 25 hearings, but,
But
Yeah.
enough as possible to,
But every time that we meet as a city council, we'll be asked to vote a yes or no. It will be an ordinance vote, or will that be, or are we gonna consider the city?
You could vote to approve it as a council, you could vote to not approve it, you could vote to amend it, or you can adjourn the meeting and continue it to a later date for continued public input. And I would note that if you're concerned, if maybe I'm sensing a concern, Councilor Williams, that if the planning commission approves it, it's some sort of binding impact on the
Right.
council, and that's not the case. It's not the case.
the planning commission would be making a recommendation. I mean, again, I would encourage you to make the recommendation specific that the city council continues to deliberate. You know, you hold a public hearing and then you continue to obtain the input you seek.
So what I'm saying though is, I think it's safer to leave it in the planning commission so that we aren't have to vote on it every time as an ordinance.
Well, whether it's the planning commission or it's the council, you have to make a decision at the conclusion of each public hearing. Do we approve it? Do we not approve it? Or do we adjourn the hearing? So it's not going to change any of your decision-making requirements. After every planning commission meeting, if you adjourn this, you'll have to make that decision. Or whether it's a city council meeting, you'll have to make that decision.
so we could, if we move it to the city council, which I think is the best process for everybody involved, then the city council, which is us, at the end of each public hearing, would say, we think, maybe we would say, hey, we didn't get enough comment from the public. We still need more information. We still want to make sure everybody's had a chance to review it. 2 more weeks is not enough time. Let's give them another 2 weeks or another month or whatever. And then we make a motion at that point in time, just like we could tonight, to move it, to adjourn the meeting to this next date and time. And then we do that process over again. And then we could adjourn the meeting and move it to another date and time. There's no binding vote that needs to happen just because it's at the council. We're all the same people. So what difference does it make if it's these people or those people? We're all the same. And the process is the same. So I would rather see a motion to move it to recommend we move the plan to the city council on July 8th. And so the city council can have enough meetings to get sufficient public input and education on the plan before we make a decision.
So since my motion is on the table, I'm looking around here at the table of the people, the other counselors, and they are nodding their head to me that it's okay with the city council to move it to the city council is what I'm seeing from every one of them. So I will make the motion that we do not adopt the plan, but we will move it to the city council on July 8th. And we will, for to have discussion, open hearing again for public involvement, so you can come and tell us your concerns and we can talk about it. And then we'll have a vote, again, like we would at both places. But then if you're not satisfied yet, if the council so agrees and we see that you're not, as Chad said, then we can have another vote. But my motion will say to not adopt this plan, but we'll move it to the city council on July 8th.
So that was your amending your project.
I'm amending my last motion. Per that I see the council, all the council are in agreement with that. Okay?
And Tammy, does your second still? Or Tammy,
It was Maria.
Yeah. Sorry, Maria, okay, very good. Sorry. I knew it was somebody over there. I apologize. It's a lot processing right now. I hope I can see the smoke. So I'll try my best to redo this. If I get it wrong, Tammy, please correct me, but I'm gonna kind of shorten it a bit. Or I could just say so amended and seconded. So Maria, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Janie, Hannah,
Yes.
Berlin,
Yes.
Richard. Motion carries unanimously. We will have another public hearing as scheduled on July 8th. Hopefully we'll see everybody there, and please bring your questions and comments.
Have a happy and safe 4th of July between now and then.
Yes, happy and safe and fun. Have a hot dog or two. Thank you all for coming.